Testing on stream. Can anyone hear me on stream? Type in yes if you can hear me. Is audio okay? Is the music too loud, too low? I'm putting in lo-fi in the back. Loud and clear? Okay, sounds good. I have it so that my alerts are muted, but it seems to still be playing, so I don't mind it, I guess, if you're watching. No, we cannot hear you asking the test. That's crazy. Can't hear the music? Okay, let me see. How about now? I hope you have a great day. Pretty good. I think that's as loud as I can put the music without it drowning my own voice out. In my head, at least. So, okay. Today it's gonna be something different. We're doing a workshop for the ENVTubers Discord. I'm gonna be here with Pink Justice and Morphus as the event coordinator, and I'm gonna try and teach everyone some things. I hope. Alright, let me undeafen and get back to the call. Hello, I'm back.
Hello, welcome. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to host this workshop with us. And without further ado, I hand it off to Pink.
Thanks, Morvis. All right, let's get it started. Thanks everyone for coming and welcome to this workshop around graphic design fundamentals. I'd love to and happy to introduce Saki here, who's going to lead this workshop, and she does a lot, if not all of the graphic design as part of her stream, so definitely go and check her out from that perspective. I'm extremely excited for this right now because I think as a starting VTuber, this is something I don't have a lot of experience with, so even if it is something that you do professionally or if it's something that's new, I think you're going to get a lot out of it. So definitely, if you just joined, go join on the Twitch. She will be taking questions from her Twitch chat, not through our event VC here. And without further ado, I'm going to get out of the way and turn it over to you, Saki, for your introduction and to start the workshop. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so today we're going to be going over what I call the fundamentals of composition. In terms of graphic design, art, or motion graphics or video editing, I feel like not a lot of people talk about this type of thing, so I really wanted to cover it. We can always learn about color theory and certain other things, but this is one of the things I feel like is really core to making something look nice. Okay, so for today, we're gonna do basic introductions in the next slide here. And then I'll go over the 3 stages of composition, which is focal element, structure, and balance. And then I'll go over just general tips just for designing, and then we'll do Q&A. Alright. So for introductions, hi everyone, my name is Saki. I am a VTuber. I'm a visual designer who specializes in graphic design and motion graphics. I've been an animator since 2016, and I just started doing graphic design works 2020 when I entered the VTubing community. I use Adobe After Effects for mainly all of my work because I was once an animator and always will be. I don't like learning new things very well. But I do use Photoshop because when you're doing schedule PSD, you kind of need that. Alright. So let's get into it. So the 3 stages of composition, we say stages, but it's all equivalent. It's not 1, 2, 3. It should be all on the same tier. Let's go towards the first one, focal element, right? The focal element is the element that the viewer is drawn to immediately. It's the first thing that you look at when you look at either an image, a drawing, a photo, a video, just that first initial, like, bam, that your eyes hit. Like, if I show you here, the first thing that you look at is the dot in the middle, right? It is the only element here in this case, but that is the focal element for this. If I were to go to the next one, now we have 4 elements. I can't begin to guess which one you're looking at because they're all the same shape, they're all the same color, they're all of the same importance. So most likely I'm gonna guess that your brain's not really sure which one to look at, or it's gonna pick one of the random ones, right? So in this case, the image that I'm showing here technically has no focal element, right? So there are many ways that we can change, or like many little aspects that we can change to an element so that it becomes the focal element of an image. And the reason why we really want it to is, one, it makes our brain feel nice. We need to have like a motivation, a reason to look at an image. If an image is just all the same, then we don't really want to keep looking at it. It's kind of why we skip over many like boring images with no impact, no wow, no bam, right? So if I do this, I change the color of one of the circles, right? Now I know for sure which one you're looking at. You're most likely looking at the teal color, right? Because it stands out. And then there's many ways that we can do this. We can do it this way. In this case, we call it saturation. We change the color so that it's a lot brighter than the other ones. We can also do this, which is high contrast. When there's an element that is specifically very high contrast, like black and white type of image, we tend to focus on that more than the rest of the image. In this case, I made all of the other circles kind of gray and then the main one black, right? There's also this is more so in like film or video editing, but we can also use camera focus, which is common because, you know, you kind of need to focus on a character or person when you're doing like video work. So in this case, I blurred out all of the side circles, you can say, and then the focal element is clear cut, right? Or we can do vice versa, where we make everything else still and then we have one object moving. When everything is still and we have one object moving, your eyes are immediately drawn towards that. It's just in an image, that's just how our brain works. The one singular thing that is different, that is how our eyes will like attract to it. And then the last one, I can't really do it here because like it's a bunch of circles. Technically, our eyes are also drawn towards faces. I just put a little face there to see if you can recognize it, but I can't really use it for this example. But usually in like a drawing or like any type of image, you usually look at a person's face or whatever character's face first, right? So to sum it up, we have some natural focal elements that I just went through, which is saturations or color, high contrast, which is black and white next to each other, camera focus, motion or movement, and faces or figures. These are all the ways that you can adjust certain elements and other features in your image, video, or design so that you can control where the viewer looks at in your said media. That being said, we do have focal element guides, which is other features that help guide the viewer to look at what we want them to, i.e. Guiding lines, framing elements, or geometry or shapes, because our brain likes clean looking things and our eyes tend to wander off the canvas or the image if we're not too careful, right? We want them to keep looking at our image. That's the goal. So I have some really basic examples for guiding lines, but here we have a bunch of lines going straight towards that circle that we were looking at before. It kind of forces you to look at it because all the lines is pointing towards that. This is a very extreme way of showing guiding lines, but usually it's a bit more subtle, right? A more subtle one, I would say, is this one. You can see that all of the lines are kind of subtly pointing towards the leftmost circle, right? Those would be more like, not natural, but more eloquent guiding lines, okay? And then we have the framing. Framing, we can probably just put a circle around it. This would also like apply under geometry, but usually when we see it in overlays, there's a few artists who tend to put like shapes, like circles, or like kind of like some type of backdrop behind the like VTuber model. just so that your eyes tend to focus on the model more. Alright? Or spacing, I could also do this, where I can just shift one thing over to the middle more, and your eyes tend to look at the middle. So I'm guessing you're either looking at the leftmost or the second leftmost circle, right? And then lastly, we have geometry. This is essentially just putting shapes around it, or having shapes formatted a certain way around it so that your eyes guide to it. This can also be combined with guiding lines or spacing. It can work with anything, but usually never hurts to put a shape behind something if you want attention to it. Excuse me. Alright. So that sums up pretty much focal element. Now we're moving on to structure. Structure is the intentional organization of elements based on a rule. There's many rules to structures. I'm only going through 2 of them today. There's plenty more. If I were to show you this image, alright, I don't think your brain likes this, does it? There's no organization, there's no structure. Like, there may be kind of like some structure like diagonally, but there's really no organization to this, right? It's not pleasing to look at, right? However, if I do this, now it looks a little bit nicer. Like, it's not anything like amazing, but like your brain wants to look at probably this more than the other one, doesn't it? Because it's organized, it's grouped together. There seems to be a purpose to the image, right? So now, today I'm going to go through 2 rules. There's plenty of other rules like the golden ratio, pyramid, and full frame, but that's more for either photography, art, or video. Today I'm focusing on the 2 rules that I use mainly for graphic design, and we're gonna go through the rule of thirds and symmetry. So the rule of thirds is essentially we split the canvas into 2 thirds both ways, and usually we want to put our focal element or our main focus of the image near the intersections of the line, like anywhere here, here, or here, or here. Usually those 4 points, right? Commonly you'll see them just align kind of like up and down for these 2. We tend to see this a lot in films, especially in like movies. They'll have like one person like over here in one scene, cutscene, and then they'll have like another person over here, and then cutscene, and then they'll have like a scene where both persons are over here, and there's like a table here for the conversation. It's pretty common in film, right? But I tend to use it as a general spacing rule for myself as well. Here, I'll show you some example. I kind of use it mainly for graphics more than overlays, kind of like this one. It doesn't have to be exact, but I kind of use it as a rough estimate to know how I'm spacing things. Not too close, not too big. You can kind of use it as a rough estimate here. So this is a graphic that I made for my friend, and here I have the main subject here. It's not perfectly aligned, but she's still somewhat here in the cross, and then same here. And then for the next one, also same thing. Using it kind of like a general like guide, right? I'm also trying to keep in mind that the spacing between like the character here and like the edge, somewhat similar, but not exactly the same, right? And then for symmetry, there is a special rule. Not really rule, but there's a kink with symmetry that I do want to talk about upcoming in a bit once we get to balance. But as for symmetry, I tend to do it more as minor features in my design. Like here, I'll have this. This is symmetry, but notice how like I'm not keeping these 2 exactly the same, even though they're technically 2 different sprites, right? And I'll get to that in a bit. Just hold on tight till we get to balance. We like symmetry, but we don't want to do it too much. Because too much symmetry, our brain doesn't know what to look at. And then same here as well. I kind of just use it sporadically throughout my design. So here I have it kind of like here, just to have some organization so that there's not too much chaotic in just looking at an image, right? So now we get to balance. This is when the visual weight of the image is balanced. Now, what is visual weight, you may ask? How does an image have weight? If I were to show you this, I would say that this image is pretty heavy on the right side. If I were to put this on a scale, the scale would be leaning towards the right? Because there's nothing to the left. If you just ignore like my chibi right here, and if it was a regular image, this image would be heavily weighted to the right. And it's these types of image that sometimes you're looking at it and you're not sure what's wrong with it. You just feel kind of uncomfortable about it. You feel kind of off, right? So in order to solve this, you want to balance it kind of. So I would put just like another element in the back, blur it out, just so we can keep the focal still on that right one, right? Now, let's go back to that symmetry case. Here we have perfectly symmetrical, like a perfectly symmetrical image. We have two circles equally spaced from each side. In theory, this is a good image because it looks balanced, right? But now if we go back to the focal element, we don't know what we're looking at still. There's two subjects on the screen. We don't know which one to look at, left or right. So then we're like, okay, let's make one bigger than the other or change it in some way so that one stands out. So now we do this. But now the image is kind of heavy on the right side, right? So then let's try changing something else. I want to make the left one the focal point this time. So now we changed color. But now your brain's probably going to feel a little bit like mixed feelings about this one. And I bet you it's because there's two things fighting for your attention here. Because left side we have color, which is very striking for us to look at. But on the right side we have high contrast. So now we have two specks of focal element to look at. We don't know which one because they're both fighting for our attention, right? So we can easily fix this by either one, dimming out the one on the right so that less contrast, and now our focus is mainly on the left one, which is bright colors. Or we can just get rid of that color entirely, dim the right one, and make the left one high contrast, right? So then we're going back. Here are the factors for visual weight. We can either do size, which is scaling the circle earlier. We can do high contrast, saturation, also faces and figures. Like if you were to look at an image where everyone is standing on the left side and no one is on the right side, then it would feel heavy to the left. So be wary of that as well when you're placing like model or like sprites or just character art, right? And now we're going to general tips. General tip number one for my end. This is something I've learned as I've gone through designing many times. Let your design breathe. Don't put everything so close together, and unless you plan to like put it cropped outside of the canvas, don't put it like on the edge of the canvas. And I'll show you what I mean by this. So like for this example, I have spacing around here. Every single element I have here has a little bit of room to breathe in. Even like the text here, we have some room. We always want like a little bit of spacing for everything to breathe in, right? And then for this one, is what I mean. If I were to keep this rounded edge on this side, I would not have put it so close to the edge. I only put it to the edge here, is I'm bringing it past the canvas. If I were to keep the rounded corners, I would have moved it in so that we would have some spacing here, because we never really wanted these edge elements to be close or like too close to the edge, right? It feels claustrophobic if you do that sometimes, or it just feels off sometimes. And then same thing here. I have this chat box. I'm also making it go off screen because, again, I don't want the rounded edges to be either on the border or way too close to the border, right? And then general tip number 2, in my opinion, sometimes it's better to keep it simple. I would rather see a minimal but readable, legible design than like a complex and super detailed, but your brain gets confused looking at it and you don't know what to look at. Make sure there's a motive, there's a purpose to your design. It's like art, like film, there's always a reason to look at the thing that you're looking at. And then general tip number 3, in my opinion, try to keep a consistent theme. Don't use so many random colors that sometimes clash. My rule of thumb, I either go based off of the colors of either my client's model or a certain palette. You can always search up color palettes online and follow that, right? That's in my opinion. You can always play around with colors too, and then you can always learn more about color theory. But if you don't know anything about color theory, you can always just whatever color palette online on Google, and then bam, you have good colors. Okay, and then I believe that is it. Now I'm at Q&A, so if you have any questions for me, feel free to pop it in chat and I'll get to it as soon as I see it. Let me answer Hokai's. So this is applied to low contrast shape being bigger while a smaller high contrast color shapes, if that makes sense. Yeah, you usually can eye it for the most part. If you look at an image and you feel like it's kind of off, then it's probably a good tell to like maybe either shrink the low contrast shape or some type of way, or make it even more dim so there's even less contrast so that we look at the focus of the image. Where do you find your inspirations? Can you describe your creative process? How do you measure your success? How do you overcome a creative block? For inspiration, on my work Twitter, I follow a lot of amazing artists. I always look at them for inspiration. Sometimes if I can't come up with a idea for like a theme, I'll go on Google and I'll just straight up type like so and so graphic design, and then I'll see other like just general graphic designs, like either poster, websites, banners, just anything, and then I'll pull from that. My creative process, I usually tend to do it in my head a lot. After like I receive a request or like a commission, I'll sit on it for like a few days, unless I'm super hyped and I'm starting it right away. I'll take a look at the assets that I look at, or I'm given, and then I'll see how I can use it, look at the reference if the person sent me any, and then I'll see how I can come up with a theme that they like. And then usually I kind of put... People tend to sketch out their rough drafts. I kind of just do it because I use After Effects, so the preview that I give clients usually are almost the final product, unless they want to change anything. And then I go from there. Usually I just work until I'm satisfied with it, send it to the client. If they like it, then I export or finish it up with the animation. If not, then I go back, revise, or whatever. How do I measure success? I don't. I kind of got into this for fun. Usually if I look at my product and I'm happy with it, and then if the person I'm making it for is happy with it, then I'd say it's a success. If there was like no rough patch in the way, I'm happy with it. I would say that's success. And then for creative block, it's hard because I do get creative blocks a lot, and I usually just take a break for like a few days or even a week, or sometimes like 1 to 2 weeks. Sometimes I'll just keep looking at the people that I follow for inspirations and watching other people work so that I'm motivated to work. Or sometimes I'll just force myself to do it, and then I'll just get back into it somehow. Where do you get graphics from? What do you mean? I usually just Google and then find either commercial-free assets. If not, then I'll make it myself or I'll replicate something myself. Do you have any other tips for stream overlays in terms of composition? Something you have noticed in your experience? This is just more of my personal opinion, but usually I tend to avoid putting like the bars for it or the panels for like tip, subscribe, or follow or dono on the bottom, because like when we have like collabs, we tend to put like people at the bottom of the screen, so when you do that, they're kind of blocked out. So I try to move that either to like the top of the overlay or like to the sidebar, and then I'll move the chat down so that you can always cover chat. But that's more so my opinion. You can always play around with it. It also depends on what the person wants as well. That's just my personal preference. And then just overall, I think the focus of the overlay should always be the model. So whenever you're choosing like the background of your overlays, make sure that it fits with the model, but it shouldn't be too close to the model colors that it drowns out the model. You want it to have a certain contrast so that the model still stands out in the overlay, right? How long have you been doing graphic design? Like late 2020. When I joined the VTuber community, because I had to do graphics for myself and my debut. What programs do you use for your graphics, and how did you learn to use these programs? I use Adobe After Effects. I came from the anime editing community, so I learned it as a clip editing type of program first, and then as I got into more effects video editing, I started learning about like shape layers and like solids, other ways to manipulate forms in After Effects, and then from there I used it to graphic design because I tried Illustrator and I didn't understand it, so I gave up and I went back to After Effects. How many colors would you recommend with any design? Typically I'd say main colors, like saturated colors, probably 1 to 2, and then the rest we want to keep it neutral, kind of like black, gray, or white. And then the other ones we can keep it like whatever colors fit with the model. For like mine, it would be like the light green and then the teal, right? Viper, I'm not answering your question. I've been trying to find graphic packs and they seem super sus to download. Honestly, you can, if you're just practicing, you can always just go into Google, search up like whatever texture PNG, and you can find certain things to use. Question from audience member: how do you usually incorporate animations in your design? Are there any challenges that arise from balancing graphics with animated? There is, which is why I try to keep my animated elements pretty minimal for the most part. I know a lot of people like a lot of animation, but usually for mine, I tend to do simple ones, like either like a particle effects in the back or just minor text flashing, if anything. I tend to keep it pretty on the smaller end so that we're still mainly focusing on the model or the gameplay rather than the overlays, because if we're making it too flashy, then it's taking our attention away, right? I recently did one where I had to do a kind of a astrology kind of telescopic kind of background, and I had to animate that. And it was kind of difficult because the background was kind of matching with the model a little bit, but I made sure that I made the animation drawn out long enough so that it's slow, so that overall we're still focusing on the model rather than the background. If you make things super jittery, super fast, then your eye's gonna keep looking at that. So keep it slow, keep it minimal, and you should be good. Challenges, just balancing it. Sometimes I just eye it, just make sure that it looks right sometimes. If you're not sure, you can always ask like your friends, anyone, ask them like, hey, you feel anything off about this? I usually tend to do that as well if I can't tell. What is the best design advice you can give for creating backgrounds for just chatting overlays? That is the part I struggle most with. I always end up overcomplicating it, or the background does not mesh well with the other elements. I personally, it depends on the client, but if we're just doing kind of like a pattern-based background, I tend to take inspiration from the model. I'll recreate like certain aspects of the model. If they have like a ribbon, if they have like a certain symbol across their design, I'll replicate that. Sometimes I'll just pull up what is the website, unsplash.com. They have a lot of commercial free images. You can also use that as kind of like a backdrop. I'll use that sometimes as well. There's a ton on there. There's a ton of photography on there that you can use. You can use it as like a texture, or you can even just use it as an overlay background as well. I tend to put it like as for the blend mode, like soft light or screen, and then turn down the opacity just so there's some type of texture or just something in the background, so that it's not just a full solid, right? In terms of overcomplicating it, I think it's a lot of finicky. You just have to play around with it a little bit. Try to space it out. If anything, space it out around the model and then see how it looks. I always have the model placeholder there so that I know what the final product looks like. I never design without the model. That is like my one requirement. I need a placeholder. And then in terms of it not meshing well, you can either play around with the colors, or if you think it doesn't fit the theme that you're going for, then maybe you have to try a whole new design sometimes. Sometimes you want to do kind of like a graphics type of design, but then it ends up we want a more elegant, so then we want to change the shape to be more sharp, more curvy, whatever is the case. You said you use Photoshop. Are there other programs you could recommend? I personally only use Photoshop to add text to my schedule PSD. But I don't think you can graphic design with Psy. I know a lot of people use Illustrator, and then there's also people who use Figma as well. Figma is also pretty good. I believe it is a free website for UI design. You can also use it for graphic design. So if anything, you can give it a try on Figma. When designing with the color palette, how do you know if you're using too much of one color? The general rule of thumb for me is that I try to use mainly the neutral colors, and then I'll use the one or two other main color as a accent. So we want to keep it around like generally kind of the same color, and then we use the two different colors in the palette as like a popping contrasting piece. So either wherever you want to look at, like let's say you wanted an outline of the chat box so that we focus on the chat box more, we can use that as the color. We can either use that also as the backdrop for the model person or as the title. Whereas like the other three colors, we can use it as a general background piece, like a gradient of some sort. How do you come up with and add random textures and messy pattern designs to the background without it looking weird or stand out too much? I tend to download a ton of random textures when I'm doing my work, and then I'll one by one I'll put it through and put it on as a texture, and then I'll play around with the opacity of each texture and then see if I like it. If I don't like it, I'm dropping it, putting in the next one, and then onward until I find the one that I like. Sometimes I'll get like halfway through the design and I don't think the texture is working anymore. I'll also drop it, go find another one, and then plop it in. It's a method of just keep trying until it looks right to you. If you're getting a commission from someone, what material can the client give to help with designing an overlay model? For one, I always like for the client to give me their model, if possible, like the model PNG, because that alone can give you the color palette, the theme, the general vibe that they're going for. And then two, if they can, I would like them to give me either like a mood board or even better, other overlays that they really like. and then if they like a certain like layout, like some people want their model on the bottom right, some people want model on the bottom left, some people want like a very minimal gaming screen, some people want like the typical like top left gaming screen with the chat box on the right. I'll ask for the format just so we don't have to design a certain way and then turns out they want the other way, right? We want it to be as clear cut as possible so that when you're designing you don't have any questions or you have to assume certain things and then turns out they don't want it, right? Try free pick, filter the search to vector and free. Yeah, that is also a good site. Will the VOD be saved here on Twitch or uploaded to YouTube for this? Yeah, I'm probably gonna post it on YouTube. Probably either tonight or tomorrow. Just so anyone can look back and use it. Yeah. Any good fonts recommendation? I have a ton of fonts. I have a habit of just going on commercial-free font websites and downloading a ton. Let's see. It really depends on the fonts that you want. I know that Proxima Nova, it's always a good default font. This is the font I'm using literally for the slides today. There's also another font called like Big Noodle Ting, which is also pretty good. Canet is also pretty good. I believe Gotham Bold is not okay for commercial free usage, but it is also a good basic font. If you want another like commercial free, there is also Unisans as well. I have a lot of fonts. I'm pulling them from the top of my head. How do you make sure that text has enough contrast with the background? What is the best color for text? For text, we want to keep it, I usually try to keep it neutral colors. Cause it's rarely that we really want the text to be the focus of the design, unless you're like doing a whole graphics. For me, in terms of overlays, I tend to keep it kind of like black-white, unless I'm doing kind of like a wonky color palette. Then I'll keep it kind of one of the neutral colors in the palette. Oops. Like for here, my main point is this, so I'm keeping it the neutral. This is just a label just for looking pretty, so I'm keeping it kind of like a saturated color, right? Hoka, I'm not answering that. Sometimes I like to add stroke to stuff, like white text on white background, just to add a dark stroke. Yeah, play around with it. You can always put on a stroke. You can always put in the color text, add a stroke, add another stroke. There's a lot of ways to go about text designing. I could go on for hours about how to do text because there's so many ways to make it look poppy. But do you have any tips for logo design in case of VTubers? So the thing about logo designing is that VTubers specific logo designing, as far as I see for maybe like a good 50 to 75% of logo designers, it's very overly detailed in my opinion, which is finer for our case because we're using it kind of like a branding. Our logo basically says what we are, right? It has like certain elements of our model on it, and we use it overall as a branding. It's how people identify us, which is fine. But in overall like logo, you want to keep it pretty general, the shape to be pretty general, so that if I were to make a logo like black and white, or either like fill it entirely with black or white, or if we want to look at the silhouette, we want to be able to like tell what it is, right? If we look at like my logo here on the bottom right, I technically have it too squished together that if I were to fill everything black, these three parts would be kind of squished. But for like style purposes, I'm squishing them. But technically there should be a gap so that if I fill everything, the silhouette, you should still be able to kind of see the wonky font, but it should say Saki, right? Georgia font does appeal to me. I just used like, what was it? Century Goth just yesterday. So some default fonts are pretty good as well. Poppins is also a good font. I noticed that too. I really like yours. Thank you. Starting out as a VTuber, what graphics asset do you think are most important right out the gate to get created? I wouldn't say a logo is required. I don't think that a logo is required when you're first starting out. But at the same time, I do think that having kind of like a style guide is good. Like having an overall color palette for yourself is always good when you're either like, if you're planning to do it for yourself or you're planning to commission others, you can just send your color palette and like certain fonts that you like for your branding, and they can stick to that so that you can overall have like a consistent branding. Like if you're doing like a trailer work, they can follow that. If you're getting commissions for overlays, they can also follow that, right? So you don't have to have a logo. Just in my opinion, having a good consistent branding with colors and fonts is a good idea, just in general. And then what's a good general size for panels? So for panels, I believe the width always has to be 320 pixels. I think the recommended size for like a rectangular panel is 160 by 320. If you have chibis, maybe make it 320 by 320. I kind of just play around with what I'm given, but usually 160 by 320, or like if you want to open it up a bit, maybe 250 by 320. It depends on what you're making, honestly. Whatever fits your ideal. And I think that's all of the questions. Oh no, are there pieces that you are most proud of? There is. I'm trying to think. The one that I was talking about, the one with the astrology in the back, I really like that one because it was a combination of astrology and tech. I'm not allowed to show it yet because it is under NDA until the said VTuber debuts her second model. But whenever that comes out, I'm also really excited for it. All the stuff I'm proud of, I can't release it yet because they're all under NDA. But if you've seen here, I posted this one on my work account. Let me link it in chat. The entire package that I did for Inksy, I'm really happy about. I kept it overall a consistent theme and color, and let me grab it for you. Super proud of this one because I kept the colors and fonts and everything very consistent. Also, just dropping it in chat. If you want an example of like a style guide, there's also this one. This is my own personal style guide. It has all the fonts, colors that is included in my logo, but you don't need a logo. You can just make a guide like the fourth image there. And then in terms of, I do want to show this other one. I think, let me see. I'm gonna exit out of this slide. I can just show you on my screen, honestly. Cool. Okay. Okay. So here is what I mean by the style guide. I have the 5 basic colors that I'm using, and then the 2 fonts that I'm using for my logo. You don't technically have to use a fancy text. I'm just using it because I wanted mine to look bougie. But yeah, usually you have like around 4 to 5 colors. And then these are just reference of what all the fonts look like. Right? And then this was the one that I said I was really proud about. I'm really happy with this one. Because certain details, I have the flowers in the back here so that it draws you to the character. And then I'm keeping this pretty, it is still pretty like contrasting, but not too much so that you're still looking at her. And overall, her color is still different compared to the rest of the image, right? And then I do want to show this one in terms of like minimal like animation. Here, I'm keeping these pretty slow, and then the petals are also keeping it pretty slow, as well as the branches. And then again, I don't want things to be on the edge, so I cut this off. I cut the other side off, I moved it off the canvas. And then here we have the model being the only like difference in colors. Okay, we have high contrast here, and I'm keeping the chat box to some relevance to her color theme, so I'm having the colors there, but otherwise, the main difference in color is still her model. So despite everything moving, we're still gonna be looking at her model because the colors pop at you, right? And then, yeah. Where do you get Cherry Blossom's animation, or do you make... I make it myself. I just make a shape layer, and then I make a custom particle animation. But, I believe Soul or Teacuppity has a, Ari preset made, if you want to use that. She has like a ton of colors in there, if anything, as well. But yeah. Any other questions? I feel like I kind of zoomed through this.
I don't think we have any other ones, but thank you again for joining us and being able to host this workshop. If any of our audience members do have any questions later on down the line, you can follow Saki on her social media. I'm going to post it in Event VC chat. You can catch her on her streams. But yeah, apart from that, thank you again for coming out and taking time out of your busy schedule to host a workshop with us. And, I learned a lot today. I'm sure everyone else has as well. And apart from that, thank you again.
Thank you for having me. I hope I was able to help people.
It was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. You can always ping me in here if you want. I'll try to answer as much as I can.
Yes, and the VOD will be posted to her YouTube channel.
Yes, I'll post a link in the Event VC whenever I have it up.
All right, wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Have a good rest of your night.
All right, you as well. Thank you, guys. All right, guys. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I'll be ending my stream so that the VOD is cropped properly. I hope I was able to teach well. Yeah. Thank you for coming, everyone. I'll post the VOD up as soon as I can. Hopefully by tonight or tomorrow morning, if anything. Be here forever, don't end. I can't do that. I mean, I can, but like, I die. Alright. Okay, Val, say less. I'm hopping on. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I'm ending stream now. Goodbye.